Now then, how are we doing? Welcome back. Welcome to another edition of Barnsley Biker Video Diaries. Got my cuppa. Yorkshire tea. The best. Right then. I said at the end of my last video that I planned on doing a Christmas special, if you like. A review of movies for the Christmas season. So if you're at a loss what to do with yourself over the Christmas period, this is my recommendation, my top 10 of movies that have a motorcycling theme somewhere in them, for the discerning motorcyclist, shall we say. So I'm going to give you my top 10, my choice this year. Next year it might be different, I don't know, we'll have a look. But all of the movies I'm going to talk about are basically films that I thought were worthy enough for me to go out and buy the DVD and have it in my collection so that I can watch at any time. So there'll be some movies that are very popular that I'll not be talking about just because I haven't got the DVD, but I do rate them. And I'm sure there are people out there that think, why didn't you include this and why didn't you include that? Maybe it's because I don't have the DVD, and if I don't have the DVD, that's maybe because I never really rated the film, so I didn't go out and buy it. Okay, so I'm going to do, as is the tradition with these things, I'm going to give you my top 10 in reverse order, give you a little bit of a review of each one of them, a little bit of a synopsis, but really what I would say is I think these movies are worth taking a look at. Get yourself a copy, find them on Netflix or whatever, and go and have a look. Okay, right, let's get into it. So, in at number 10, Oil in the Blood. Now this is more of a documentary by a chap called Gareth Maxwell Roberts, who I have met personally. I actually had the good fortune to buy a used Land Rover from him. But Oil in the Blood, it's, as it says, it's a movie about motorcycle people, a documentary. And basically it's a sequence of interviews with people. It came out 4 or 5 years ago, 2019 I think. And it's a sequence of interviews with people that are active in the Renaissance, the revival, the new custom bike scene, if you like. People that are building calf racers, retro choppers, every variety of custom motorcycle, and it's talking to the people and talking to the people that ride them. Well worth a look. There's some interesting little snippets in there, some interesting interviews and some very interesting bikes, and a little bit of a few interesting bit of soundtrack in there. There's a few songs that I've thought, you know what, I'll download that. So well worth a look. It's one of those, if you've just got 10 minutes to spare, you can watch 10 minutes of it and come back to it. If you've got an hour or two to spare, sit down and enjoy the full documentary. Well worth it. I come back to it quite regularly. So yeah, that's my in at number 10. Coming in at number 9, maybe the first of the ones that people might feel is not a motorcycle movie, The Pebble and the Boy. Yep, it basically focuses on a lad that goes on a journey on a scooter. It's sort of, you could say it's a follow-up to Quadrophenia in some ways, a follow-up to that era. The basic synopsis of the movie is the lad's dad he dies, he's killed, and one of his son decides to take his dad's old scooter, ride down to Brighton and scatter the ashes, his ashes on the beach in Brighton. But along the way, one, he finds romance, but also he finds a little bit more about his dad and what happened to his dad many years ago. His dad ended up in prison for something, and he finds the truth behind what happened. One of the beauties of that film is it's very well made, but it was a film that was made on a budget. It was crowdfunded, an independent film. Yeah, there's a few well-known actresses in there, but a lot of extras, amateurs, etc. But it's a well put together film, an interesting storyline, and well worth a look. You know, it's not going to challenge you, but it's well worth a look. It does come, one of the other things that I like about it, it comes with a really good soundtrack, with music from The Jam, Paul Weller, Style Council, The Chords, if you're into that sort of music. And yeah, I'm not turning mod on you. There is a scene where the couple stay at a bed and breakfast, a hotel, or whatever you want to call it, that is run by a couple of bikers, and there are a lot of bikers that frequent this place. And yeah, an interesting little scene in the movie. There are bikes in there. Yes, it focuses on the journey of this young lad on his scooter, but there are bikes in there. And if, like me, you've come from the 70s and you've grown up with the likes of Quadrophenia and all that, and then the two-tone ska movement and the renaissance of scooters, while I was always into bikes, yeah, it harks back to that a little bit. But it's a really good film. I really like that one. So worth a look. Put it on your list. Sit down and get yourself a beer or a coffee. Watch Pebble and the Boy. Okay, moving on. An older movie. This one of my favourites that I do pick up to watch. It's easy watching. It's a musical, Streets of Fire. In the opening credits and in the release blurb, if you like, it was referred to as a rock and roll fable, and it's a fairly basic storyline. An up-and-coming singing artist lady is kidnapped by this biker gang, and her agent, who also claims to be her boyfriend, hires her ex-boyfriend, who's also ex-army of some sort, to come and rescue her from this biker gang. It's sort of set in an alternative future, dystopian future type scenario, if you like. The things I like about the movie: one, brilliant soundtrack. Jim Steinman has done some of the songs. Stevie Nicks, Ry Cooder, Tom Petty do some of the songs in there. So it's got a really good soundtrack. The hero drives around in a really nice hot rod car that he acquires early on in the film, and the baddies, William Dafoe plays the leader of the biker gang, the baddies, and they all ride around on sort of rat rod, well patinaed old Harleys, except for a few of the stunts where you'll see some not so well disguised Japanese dirt bikes that are being used for the stunt scenes. But yeah, some really nice bikes, some really good scenes. Good movie. Again, it's one of those easy watching, not too challenging. Some great songs, some great scenes. Well worth a look. If you've not seen it, it has become a bit of a cult. What I would say is they did try and do a follow-up, a sequel. Avoid it. It is terrible. Absolutely terrible. I've tried watching it 2 or 3 times. I think it's available on YouTube or Netflix. Yeah, avoid it. It will spoil your enjoyment of the original Streets of Fire. But yeah, well worth it. Put that one on your list to watch over the holiday period. Okay, moving on. Next one. There you go. The Loveless. Okay. William Dafoe again. Playing, you could call it the bad guy. He is sort of also the hero in some ways, I suppose. It's more of a complex storyline, although not over complex, Basically, it revolves around a group of guys. I've seen various reviews that refer to them as a bike gang, but it's 50s Americas, a group of drifters on their bikes on the way down to Daytona. They stop off in some Midwest small town with the intention of meeting up with friends there to carry on the way. One of the guys has an issue with his bike, so they find a local garage where they can carry out repairs and stay in town a little bit longer than they were intending. They get involved in some of the small town politics and some of the rivalries and relationships that are going off. All revolves around that. Willem Dafoe plays a really good part in this one, but again, the star of the film are the bikes, old panhead Harleys, and one of the other actors that plays alongside Willem Dafoe, Robbie Gordon, a bit of a singer, sings sort of 50s style, 60s style music, and again, the soundtrack to the movie, it makes it well worth a watch. But yeah, if you're into old Harleys, if you're into Americana, if you're into that sort of period music, etc., give it a watch. Yeah, I'll not say any more because it gets mixed reviews. It's become a bit of a cult for varying reasons, but as I say, if you're into your old 50s, 60s Harleys, 50s, 60s cars, 50s, 60s Americana, watch that. The Loveless. Great film. One of my all-time favourites. The next one. This one probably not as well known as the ones I've looked at so far. Okay. Little Fouse and Big Halsey. Starring Robert Redford, riding bikes. I first saw that on Sunday afternoon television, and I've been looking for it you don't see it shown on TV these days, probably because it has to be heavily edited to be shown on Sunday afternoon TV. Some of the scenes wouldn't get past the 9 o'clock watershed cut-off point, I think, when you watch the full movie. But it basically revolves around Robert Redford's character, who's a bit of a drifter that makes a living, earning a little bit, doing desert dirt racing, etc. Made in 1970, and so a lot of the bikes that you see are early Japanese, or some of the like Husqvarna or Triumph Desert sleds, etc., that are racing. But it follows Robert Redford, who teams up with this guy that's a decent mechanic, and they drift around, taking part in various races. There's a bit of a love interest in there, which causes division between the two guys. Really good film. It's of its period, but again, the beauty of it is the soundtrack. There's songs by Johnny Cash and a few other, Carl Perkins. I'm trying to remember who else. But the music to the movie is really, really worth watching it. The soundtrack, but also if you're into classic vintage bikes, desert races. I mean, in later scenes there's some sidecar racing and there's some road racing, all from the 70s. So you see in 1970s dirt bikes, there's quite a lot of Yamahas used, the early well, the pre-DTs, I suppose it's the CTs and 350s, 360s, 250s, whatever they're racing. So some classic Yamaha dirt bikes in there, and some classic racers. So again, if you're into the older bikes, give it a whirl, give it a watch. Yeah, I watch it on a fairly regular basis. Quite like that one. Okay, excuse me, I've got a tickle. Let me have a drink. All right, next one, coming in at number 5. That eternal classic. 1979, Quadrophenia. Doesn't seem like that long ago. And again, I'm sure there's some of you watching this are like, well, that's about scooters, that's about the mods and all that. I like Quadrophenia on two levels, if you like. One, the original film was made in the late 70s, 1979, and starred quite a lot of the up-and-coming actors of the time that have gone on to do bigger things. Also starred Toyah, Wilcox and Sting, artists that were of my era. I was into the punk, two-tone, ska, all that sort of music, and so again, the film is of that time. I can remember, unfortunately I live too far away, but I was riding bikes at the time, and I remember, I don't know if it was which publication I saw it in, whether it was one of the magazines or Motorcycle News or whatever, but a call went out for extras to go along because they were doing this film, and they were looking for scooter clubs and bike clubs to go down and take part as the extras for the fight on the beach scene and some of the riding through the streets in Brighton, etc. So those of you that are fairly keen will pick out the scooters that aren't of the right era and some of the fashion that's not quite of the right era. And one of the things you see when especially on the beach fight scene is a lot of the bikers have got hair that's a little bit longer than it may have been in the 1960s, but probably typical of the hair that was worn, or the style of hair that was worn in the 1970s with the 1970s bikers. But also, obviously, because it's set in the 60s, and the music that most of the music is from that era. Obviously, it's based around the Who's Quadrophenia LP that had been out for a few years. It's basically an interpretation of Pete Townshend's Quadrophenia concept, and uses quite a few, obviously the soundtrack from that as its background as well. But yeah, Quadrophenia, it's got bikes, it's got scooters, it's got the fashions of the time. It's a nostalgia trip, and still a good film, a good movie to watch. So yeah, that one's always been in my top 10. Okay, moving on. Easy Rider. Now apparently when I started looking up doing this video, Easy Rider came out in 1969, Quadrophenia in 1979. Put that down. 10 years apart, but two totally different films, obviously from different sides of the Atlantic. Quadrophenia is set in the 60s, and that's what was happening in the UK in the 60s. Easy Rider is a reflection of the late 60s, early 70s in America. Some people will tell you that Easy Rider hasn't dated well. It's a film that I now watch in a different way, probably, and again probably with a bit of nostalgia, but I can remember this is one of the films that had a fair influence on my life. I remember going to see it in the cinema, must have been in the mid-70s, just after I'd started riding bikes, and I got my first bike in 76, so it must have been late 70s when I went to see Easy Rider in the cinemas. And yeah, not what you'd expected, sort of does blow you away in different ways. The biggest impact it had on me was the cinematography. Some of those landscapes, some of those shots as they're riding through America, and it's two guys searching for America, I suppose, was part of the concept, but also trying to find themselves. They'd gone on this pilgrimage down to go to the Mardi Gras. Yeah, still a great film. I know people that do diss it, but no, I still enjoy it, still like watching it. But yes, it's over the years, it hasn't aged as well as maybe Quadrophenia or some of the other films, shall we say. But no, still a great movie, still worth a watch. Get a few beers, get sat down and enjoy a trip across America. Okay, so we're coming into my final three. And in at number 3, and I didn't think this one came out as late as it did, but there you go, Silver Dream Racer. Okay, which came out in 1980. I thought that came out before Quadrophenia, but obviously it came out a year after. Silver Dream Racer. That was a bit of a Marmite film when it came out. Well, probably not quite a Marmite. It was a film that didn't get very good reviews back when it came out, and the motorcycling fraternity were quite critical of it for various reasons. I enjoyed it at the time. You know, it's a great, it's not a complex storyline, but David Essex plays a down on his luck club racer who suddenly gets handed this what looks like to be a world-beating machine that his brother's designed. Unfortunately, his brother's passed away, and goes on to race it at Silverstone. The reason that, to be fair, I probably like Silver Dream Racer now more than I did when it was first released. Mainly because, again, I am into the classic bike scene, classic racing scene, etc. You can now watch Silver Dream Racer and you'll see Donington, Silverstone, Brands Hatch as they looked in the 1980s. The Suzuki Heaven GB race team was heavily involved in making the film, so the bikes that Barry Sheen was riding back at the time feature. Obviously Barry Sheen's not one of the actors in it, but a lot of the race shots feature the Suzukis in the Suzuki livery, but also obviously the bikes that Suzuki were racing against at the time, you know, the Kawasaki's and the Yamahas of the 1980s. Excuse me. All classic racers these days. Yes, unfortunately for a lot of the filming, they were occasionally mixing it with 250s and that in some of the race scenes, and it's a little bit to be believed, shall we say. But even some of the off-track scenes, I remember one of my favourite scenes is David Essex has gone on a bit of a bender for various reasons, and again, if you've not seen the film, watch it. And he jumps on an SP370 Suzuki in the street outside the bar he's been having a drink in, and wheels it down the street. You know, these days, where would you see an SP370 in a film? But there is this spanking Suzuki. I think were fairly heavily involved in the film with helping out. So yeah, now a nostalgia trick taking us back to the late 70s and motorcycle racing in the UK in the late 70s. As I say, Donington, Silverstone, Brands Hatch have changed so much, and you don't realise till you watch something like Silver Dream Racer. So that was my number 3 on the list, and again, a film I still will put on quite regularly to watch. Okay, right, coming in at number 2, On Any Sunday. Again, this is one of the films that I saw early on in my, motorcycling journey, shall we say, and it again, it changed my life quite a lot, to be fair. Maybe I haven't, from watching that, I had an interest in flat track. I've never had a go at it, but I enjoy watching flat track racing, dirt riding on the dirt bike racing, dirt bike riding. You know, I had a little trail bike. Watch On Any Sunday, straight away I'm modifying it and I'm getting out doing lanes and playing in the woods and fields and quarries as often as I can, inspired by that. Yeah, I think I saw it at the cinema early on, and again, it's a documentary. but as the title suggests, it follows a guy on his throughout the season in his attempt to retain the #1 plate for the AMA Flat Track Series. But interspersed with that, it takes a look at all the different motorcycling activities that take place. Set in America, obviously it's filmed in America. So you get to see all the different aspects of motorcycle racing, competition, or just leisure use. Obviously, it also stars Steve McQueen, Malcolm Smith, who we've just recently lost. The scene towards the end of them hooning around on the trails and in the desert, still iconic, and it's still you watch that and you just want to get out there and have fun on a motorcycle. The whole film is just to really centres around how much fun motorcycling can be, and I think that's why Steve McQueen got involved in it. He loved motorcycling so much he wanted to share his love of motorcycling with the greater public, and yeah, I went from being somebody that commuted on a motorcycle to school to somebody that wanted to ride motorcycles because I saw that movie gave me an insight into the fun, and I went on to enjoy motorcycling for the next 40 odd years. Here I am, still enjoying it. Okay, so that brings us round to my my #1. For many years, on any Sunday, was my #1 go-to, my all-time favourite motorcycling movie, documentary, whatever you want to call it. Until this year, when I finally got to see the Bike Riders. This was due to be launched late last year, and for various reasons, because of the writers' strikes and what was going on off in Hollywood, the launch was delayed and it came out the middle of this year. Give you a bit of background. The Bike Riders is basically this book by Danny Lyons brought to life. Okay, and I think if you've not seen this book, or you've not seen, I'll show you, let me just have a quick flick through. If you've not seen some of the photos, excuse me, that Danny Lyons took, it's difficult to appreciate the movie fully. Okay, Danny Lyons was and is a professional photographer who did various projects, but back at the time he was taking these photos, he was one of the founding members of a motorcycle club in America called the Outlaws. Okay, and he was a member for 3-4 years, I'm not sure exactly how long. And during that period, he would take photos when they were out riding, etc. But he also conducted interviews with a lot of the members of the club. And I came across Danny Lyons by finding his photos, generally by accident, on the internet, and sort of dug a bit deeper and eventually bought the book when I realised that these photos were available in this book. And in the back of the book, you've got the interviews down on paper of the members of the club that Danny conducted while he was a member. I think he went back a few years later to do a few more interviews. So the film is basically based around those interviews and the photos. And if you've seen the book, seen the photos, you'll immediately recognise scenes in the film. If you've read the book, you will see that the script for the film almost follows the interviews, word for word in some cases. It's not your typical film. It's basically a three-way relationship between the character played by Austin Butler and the Jodie Comer's character are in a relationship, but then you've got Tom Hardy's character, and it's this pull between the love interest and the bike club commitments between Austin Butler and Tom Hardy's characters, Johnny and Benny, and Kathy, Jodie's character, and it flits around. The story, the film doesn't follow a linear timeline, and one of the beauties about it is, as it flits around, you know, it's in the 70s, and then it's in the 50s, or it's in the 60s, and the fashions and the styles and everything it changes for each scene appropriately as he's doing interviews in the different locations, and the film sets are very much based on the photos. So, you know, where he interviewed Kathy, or Jodie's character, in a laundrette on the film, they've set up a 1960s laundrette, etc. Again, if you're into your Americana, if you're into old Harleys, I mean, that is the star of the film, is the bikes. They went to a lot of trouble to get period correct Harleys for the actors to ride. How they got away with the actors not wearing helmets, you know, these guys, some of them did ride bikes, but not all of them were familiar with riding bikes, and very few of them had any experience riding old Harleys, you know, the 1960s panheads and knuckleheads that are used in the films. So very few of them had experience riding the older Harleys, temperamental things that they can be. So it's my number one favourite all-time biker movie, because it captures the period, it captures the attitudes of the time, but also the crux of the film, and the crux of the what you get from the interviews is how the club evolved, and yes, they became what you'd call a patch or outlaw club. They evolved into that, and it's how Johnny, Tom Hardy's character, loses control over the club as they move into the 70s. I'll not spoil it for you, but he totally loses control. But it's all based on true story. It's based on true life people. It's based on what their words, what they said about their time with the club when Daniel Lyons interviewed them. So Daniel Lyons went on to photograph lots of things in America that were happening, like the civil rights movement, etc. He went on to document that in photography and became a very well-known photojournalist. But this, yeah, as a film, I love it. Not everybody will. Depends what you know, if you're expecting Hell's Angels on wheels or whatever type film, no, you're not going to get that. But it is a dramatised documentary almost of the evolution of American motorcycle clubs stroke gangs. Well worth the watch, as I say, even if it's just for the bikes, the cars and the fashion. Okay, that's my top 10, my festive top 10 if you like. But yeah, I do recommend any or all of those films. If you've not got them, go and find them on Netflix, go and find them on DVD, on download, whatever. Every one of them I think is worth a watch. Right then, that's it. That's my movie review. Hope you enjoyed it. If you've got any suggestions for movies that you think I might like to watch, or other people might like to watch, stick them in the comments. But for now, I'm going to sign off. Unless we get some decent weather between Christmas and New Year and I get out and have a ride, this will probably be my last video until we get into the new year. So have a good one, and I'll see you.